To live is to suffer. You suffer a lot. Even when you're happy and content, you suffer because you don't know what you are. And as long as you are separated from yourself, suffering will occur. But lately, I see around me that the degree of suffering of people I know and the story of my country is of extreme suffering. And extreme suffering is bringing the story to the most painful point it can get, to the highest degree of living the potential of hurt and grief and despair. Extreme suffering is not the ordinary suffering we suffer every day, just being alive, just walking through our lives. Extreme suffering is when the story becomes absolutely unbearable. How much more can you take? Can it get worse? It's so bad. How can it get any worse than this? This story is horrifying. It seems like there is no hope in the horizon, and the suffering is not only from the events that are occurring or what is happening, it's also from the knowing that you are trapped in this state and there is no way out, because the story is telling itself through you in such an awful way. And characters, persons, usually what they say, I don't want this story, I didn't choose this story, and I want it to go away. I want everything to be fine with me. I cannot bear so much suffering. I see the suffering around me. I see the suffering of human beings just in their ordinary lives. They don't know they suffer, but they do. And I see the extreme suffering of characters that their story becomes just like a nightmare that you cannot wake up from. And I see the story of my country that is a nightmare. And the most horrifying thing for the persons, whomever is in the state, is that he cannot do anything about what is happening. He has no control. And if anything, the story, the prospect is only that it will get worse. So, in this optimistic tone, we can ask ourselves, why did we choose for ourselves such awful stories? Why do we continue to do that to ourselves through the stories of the separate forms, entities, persons? I'm a mother of 4, and if there's one thing I know is that giving birth isn't easy. It's painful, but the most painful part is the final stage. It's the unbearable pressure and pain before the baby's just being pushed out of you. It's an unbearable pain. You think you are going to die because it's too much for the body to feel, and then like just an instant relief, it ends, the suffering ends, and there's a baby. And childbirth is an analogy for what we want from ourselves. We want to bring ourselves, to deliver ourselves, because knowing ourselves, self-realization, enlightenment, this becoming this thing that we are, this all-nothingness that we are, is just like being reborn. Dying, the old character dies, and then it's being reborn as what it has always been, this thing. And you cannot go through labor peacefully. There will always be pain involved in the process, because it is such a huge thing to bring life into this world, or to deliver ourselves from what we were to what we are and what we have always been. The character goes through life, and in her life, according to the story, she pre-decided for herself, not as an individual that has decided for himself, but as this thing, this wholeness, this oneness that sees no difference between the stories. It doesn't matter for us if the story is being told through Simcha or through you or through anyone else or through an animal. It doesn't matter. It's the same. But according to your point of view, you are still a character. And we, oneness, want to know ourselves. I mean that we want to become what we are, without the shackles, without the confinement, without like the straight jacket that is on us, that is the character, that is what we perceive as us. So we have to break free, and unfortunately the characters are so involved in their psychological structures that they cannot remove this jacket themselves. I mean, we cannot do any kind of spiritual, meditational, mindfulness work and evolve. This is the great, great scam that it is possible to reach freedom through mindfulness and meditation. You cannot do that. The only way to free your mind is to truly become something else as a character. Not to perfect the character to be a spiritual something that resembles the oneness. The only way goes through the character, through the world. We go through the world, and we want not to go through the world. We want just like something will fly us over the crowd, and we will be more holy than the crowd, the dumb crowd that is busy in his daily life. We are more evolved than these simple persons, because we know the truth. It doesn't matter if you know the truth. If I tell you, you are nothingness, you are all nothingness, you are free and empty and eternity itself. It doesn't matter. You are still in the street with all these ignorant others, because you are ignorant just like them. And the only thing you can do is acknowledge that state that you are still perceiving yourself as a human being, and as such, the only way you can really elevate and move and truly fly and break free from this great, great ignorance is moving to what is in your disposal, and this is your body, your mind, your psychological structure, your character. And this is where suffering comes into the picture, because suffering offers you the opportunity to look again and change. And people don't want to change, don't want to look at themselves. People don't want this opportunity when it's offered in a peaceful and nice way, or just through life. They will not bother because it's too convenient. So comes suffering. And the more the character needs an upgrade or a basic like shake, the suffering will increase, or the story will be more radical. There will be extreme suffering for a character that needs a decent shake. And it's not because we are cruel to ourselves. We are most compassionate to ourselves. We want only the best thing for us. We know, oneness knows, that the story isn't real. The suffering isn't real. The characters are not real. The blood is not real. Everything you can imagine. Your body isn't real. Your illness is nothing. The only thing that is real is how you perceive it and process it and act. What you express. In a state of extreme suffering, the thing that you express is the only thing. If you express heroism, bravery, courage, hope, love, if you express high values in an extreme state of suffering, you evolve. And if you surrender to the extreme suffering or you cause suffering to others, you're basically staying where you are put. So if an extreme suffering state appears in your life, it is the opportunity you have been waiting for to grow, to change, to become the highest you can, to fulfill your full potential, to become what you were designed to be by yourself, the highest character possible. And it is also pre-decided by you. This opportunity is given to you by yourself, so you can cope with it, so you can act in the most noble, moral, compassionate way you can to react to the state. When the body betrays you, it is horrible, it is terrible. But is your mind free? Is your mind still free? What are you if not your mind? You are. Everything is this vague thing that you cannot see or touch, which is your soul, your mind, who you are, what you project. If this is the story, and it is a cruel story, I know, people, a most beloved cousin of mine, almost my age, she became paralyzed due to a stroke. So it is a terrible thing for a young person to happen in his life. It is great suffering, great depression. It is the extreme story of this free spirit that was used to run around, and then it is confined. It needs help from others, from her children. It's a terrible story. But it happened, but it is her story, this is her character, this is her opportunity. What is she doing now? How can she look at her life and say, okay, I've done up until this point, this is who I was, now I am this body. What can I do now with my mind? What can I still express and more? Because extreme suffering always offers the opportunity to cope with it and then run and tell, just like kiss and tell, run and tell others how you overcame this terrible thing. And then you become an inspiration to others because you coped with something so extreme and you managed to do that. And then you can help others go through a similar story. when I see people who are in extreme stress and suffering, I always look at them as teachers to be. This is what the final end, the goal of their suffering is, to teach others to cope, to learn, to save themselves, and then help others to do the same, because only someone who walks through the story can know the subtleties of how to help someone who is in a similar state. And then you become the best teacher or friend you can to others. Because together there is like a solidarity or brotherhood, because we are all going to die anyway someday. No one will escape this illusion of ending. And our lives here are so short and fleeting. We tell a story. Some people have a really nice story without much drama. There are few I know. And the rest of them just cope and manage and fight. And there is no use spending this time that we appear to be here resenting our story. It will not do. We cannot fight the story. We chose the story. This is the suffering we summoned for ourselves. It's hard to grasp. The mind will say, I would never do that to myself or to anyone. Never in a million years. But we do. If we go and trust this proposal of an idea of how to perceive reality, if you do believe that you planned this thing for yourself, if you truly believe that, you will act differently, because you will know you are responsible for the things that happen, and try just to get it together. Get help. Use everything you can. Use everyone you can. Use people who are in similar stories. And sometimes, like in my country, fight for your country. Fight for it to heal from this wound of October 7th, and to heal society, that it will be stronger and more healthy, and that everything will just be cleansed, because the character wants to be cleansed, wants to be pure. How can you? It's like a big word, but I will use it. It is redemption. It is becoming. This thing is being redeemed. Freedom is what Jews call the coming of the Messiah. It's this thing. It's absolute and total bliss and knowing of the eternity we are. So becoming this thing, you have to be very, very strong and pure. So you become, through the story, slowly, slowly. You have to. It's like getting inside a washing machine. And it's not nice because it whirls, and you know sometimes there is a stone inside it, just so it will be, to get all the stains out of the character. And the stains themselves, your sins, they don't belong to you, because you are not you. It's the same old oneness. It's a general journey of oneness to reveal itself to itself. So the sins or the karma or everything you want to call why stories happen to different characters, it is common to everyone. It's not yours. The suffering is not yours. It may seem that you are alone in a room and this is your suffering. This is you. It's only you. No one else knows. or feels your pain and your suffering, this extreme story. But it's not true. You are not you. You are everything around you. You are me. And the suffering belongs to everyone. And the suffering, this extreme, extreme suffering, is the illusion of a suffering character. In reality, no one suffers. There is no one to suffer. The story isn't real. And we would never, no God, no nothingness, no emptiness, no force of nature, or call it what you want, your God, no thing would do that to itself. Truly, it's cruel. And we are very compassionate. We are extreme compassionate. We would never hurt ourselves. Never. You are never being hurt. Never. No one to be hurt. No hurt is being. When you look and when you know truly the nature of this thing, you know there is no death, there is no blood, there is no cruelty. This is the story, this is the illusion. It's terrible, but it's not real. No one really suffers. The suffering, this extreme suffering, happens to no one. When the identification will yell, no, it is happening to me. I am in extreme suffering. This is me. This is my life. This is, like my cousin would say, my leg is paralyzed, not yours. But I would say, yes, it seems like you are paralyzed. You are not. Your mind is free. You are free. You can live your life according to the story, so it would have to change. Sometimes extreme suffering changes your daily life, your circumstances, the place you live, the people you are with. The story changes because of the suffering. Someone dies, so the story changes. But if there's something that never changes, it is who you are, and you never change. You go through this extreme suffering, and somehow you manage to do that. Somehow you get up in the morning and you start your day, and you go through your morning. Maybe all through the day you are depressed, maybe you are not, but you manage to do this, to continue living with this something unbearable. And this is a great triumph. And the next stage is to cope with the problem, with this extreme suffering, to get all the help you can and try to cope with it and make it at least bearable, and then to try to build yourself from this point and reflect on what this thing wants to teach you. Who were you before this extreme suffering? What happened? What does your character wants to do to itself? How does it want to evolve? Do you need to be more independent? Do you have to be more strong? To believe more in yourself? To express your talents? And once you cope with like the issues, the immediate thing you have to cope with, and then you try to build yourself. If you will succeed, like they say, you will become stronger, because you now know many things other people that have not gone through extreme suffering will never know. And you know that you are smarter than them and you are stronger than them, because they are so naive they don't know even that such pain is possible. And you do. And you cope with it. You coped with it. And they didn't understand you, but now you can help them if they'll need to. Now you can offer them ways how they can help themselves. I have a friend who is escorting her dying mother, and I did that like 8 years ago. She was very sick, And it was a very painful process. It was before the shift, and I used to be a character and cry, and I went through this terrible experience of seeing your mother suffering so much, and now she is doing the same. And I see her suffering, and I know she knows Simcha, the character, has been through the same thing, and now when we talk, I can help her with advice or words that will help her go through this state and let her mother go, escort her journey, this painful journey. So to see the suffering of others after you overcame your suffering, it's a power you cannot describe. It's like a new something being built inside the character. So there are many reasons why extreme suffering appears in your life, and basically it comes to teach us a very valuable lesson that we need to learn, because the character must be complete, pure, strong and independent in order for it to deliver itself as the new thing, to be redeemed. It has to go through this pain of labor. So sometimes the most painful parts are the final stages, just before the birth, just before you become what you are. You have to suffer so much because the grand prize, this thing is so big. It is so big, so it justifies all the suffering that came before it. Now it sounds strange, but this is it. All the suffering, and then you know the suffering was not real. And this is what I think humanity is doing right now. Going through the final stages of birth, of becoming the thing we were meant to be, as what we were always. We are not humans. This is not, we are not going to become better human beings. We are going to be united with ourselves, with what we are. So these are the final stages. The oneness takes care through the separate stories, and the pressure goes up, and the suffering is extreme, and maybe you are suffering now from an extreme situation, and I guarantee that you are always safe, you are always free. You will go through this extreme suffering and become something better, something that can help others, and this is the thing that moves you forward to becoming the highest you can, the highest character you can, and breaking free from the character through perfecting this character and through this endless pain and suffering. And then, just like in childbirth, the baby is born, the suffering ends, and everyone is happy.